on my next guest, Drew Simoneau. Currently the Faceoff guy in the PLL for the Waterdogs. Played at Nazareth College. How you doing, Drew?
Good, Ian. How about yourself?
Good. So I guess the first question that I'm going to be asking is how was your recruiting process for college? Obviously going to Nazareth, but is that where you wanted to go initially, or?
That kind of took like a roundabout way to get there. I could kind of spend a really long, like 20 minutes talking about it. Just to kind of summarize, no, I was actually reached out by one of the assistants that was there at the time when I was in my later high school years, Marty Kelly. He saw me play, I think it was at the Hotbeds tournament in Delaware. That was my first junior year, and I can get to elaborate on that in a little bit, but he saw me play down there, and then Nazareth kind of got on my radar, and I went on a couple of visits after that, and loved the school, and that's how it came to be.
Awesome. So I'm assuming when you say your second junior year, that's when you're talking about transferring to Kimball Union?
Yes. Yep.
So why did you transfer to a prep school for junior year?
It kind of all started when I was playing hockey. I was doing travel league, and then I can't remember how I got hooked up with what was his name? His name was Brian. It's killing me that I can't remember his last name. Brian something. But anyways, it was a travel team, and what we would do is we played a bunch of the prep school teams in New England, and so that kind of that was what, 7th and 8th grade, I think, and a little bit of 9th grade I played with them. So I kind of got exposed to like a little bit higher level through hockey, not even lacrosse. And so I was thinking, prep school is like, better alternative than the public school I was in. My public school had recently just started a lacrosse team, and I was really big on hockey at that point. So I was still kind of, wishy-washy on which way I really wanted to go. But that's kind of how the idea started. I applied to some schools before I even got to high school. I got denied, and so I went to 3 years at my public high school, Goffstown High School in New Hampshire. And then my summer of my first junior year at Goffstown, a coach from a school in Maine, he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm interested. We have a lacrosse team." And I went out there, and financially it just didn't make sense for my family to put me through that, and it just wouldn't have been fair to them. So it didn't work out, and kind of in a coincidence, my mom was talking about it. I was a big letdown. I was really looking forward to it. And then she actually worked for a woman that was on the board of Kimball Union Academy, and she's like, "Oh, let me just put in a word." And I got an interview, and they really liked me, and that following fall I was at Kimball Union. So it was a kind of a fast progression. So my would-be senior year was now my repeat junior year, and then I did a senior year at Kimball Union.
Awesome. So I guess I don't know, I'm from the general area, from Chester, New Hampshire. I'm from Greater Boston area. That kind of hockey lacrosse split is something that I'm sure you were common to growing up, and really kind of people differentiating kind of what path they want to take. When did that kind of become apparent to you that lacrosse was going to be your decision at Kimball Union?
Pretty much right away. As soon as I got to the school and I did my interview, and they pretty much told me right there, they're like, "We really like you. We think you'll be a really great asset for the school." Right there at that point, I was pretty much well into lacrosse anyways. I'd say, I think it came around like my 8th grade and 9th grade year, when I was transitioning into high school. I told my dad, I was like, I don't know if I want to play for my high school team. I think I just want to go to juniors. My dad looked at me. He's like, "I don't even think you'll play it like on a third line offense on the high school team. Why would I pay for you to go play juniors?" And I kind of said it. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, he kind of has a point." So kind of like, it was a little bit of like a, "Hey, you're not ready for this." It kind of hit me hard, but at the same time kind of woke me up. I was like, I guess that's not where I'm going. So then after, picking up lacrosse more and doing more traveling lacrosse in the summers, I realized that there are a lot more opportunities. And so that's kind of when I made that switch.
And then how old were you when you started like lacrosse? Was it a youth program or middle school, kind of building into your now professional career?
My town, there was lacrosse around, but I'd really never heard of it. My town got lacrosse when I was I was in my 5th grade year. I was going into school one morning, and I was following this kid that was on the wrestling team with me, and he was talking to one of the teachers that was trying to get it started up, and he's like, "Hey, like we're starting this lacrosse program. I think you'd be a great athlete. Would you want to do it?" And I was like, "Oh, man, like never heard of that before." So I asked him about it. He's like, "I don't know what it is." And so I went. Asked my parents about it. They had no idea. So then they had like an informational meeting, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll give it a try," because I play a little bit of everything: hockey, I play a little bit of soccer, track and field, and cross country. Early on in my youth years. So it was exposed to a lot of different sports, but lacrosse is one of those ones I hadn't, and I picked it up and kind of I would say I didn't really, unlike most people where they pick up a stick and they fell in love right away. It was more like a trial by fire. Like I was just thrown in there in a parking lot practice, and then over time I grew to like it and just like how diverse it was, and how you can change your stick and string it different ways, and that kind of really sunk in with me. I was like, oh, I can kind of change things about my own gear to make me perform better, and that's kind of really what I liked. And over time it really just resonated with me. And then obviously by that time I was making that transition and away from hockey, and I was like, there are more opportunities this way, and that's kind of how it all got started.
As a fellow face-off guy, I don't think I started facing off initially. When kind of did you figure out that part of your game, and that was going to be something that you would do in college and as well as the pro game?
I'd always faced off, even from starting with youth league. I'd always just something I'd always done. It was never something I really like paid close attention to. It was nothing I kept track of my stats or had my parents videotape me or anything. I would occasionally keep, like when I realized, like 7th or 8th grade, I'm like, I'm okay at this. I was like, all right, so obviously I'll do it. But I always hated, like when people would call me like a Fogo in high school, I hated it. My coach at Kimball Union actually called me like a stupid Fogo one time. I got so mad at him. But really wasn't until like I got to Nazareth and I was like, okay, obviously I could dabble with offense and defense, but it obviously the level of play going from high school to college, at least from my experience, it was a little bit different. Obviously people are a little bit faster and the pace is a little bit better. So I had to kind of wean down. I started playing offense, defense, and facing off my freshman year. Then I transitioned to face-offs and defense, and then it was pretty much just face-offs after that. So after my sophomore year. So it kind of was more like I wanted to contribute as much as I could. And then pretty much like sophomore, junior year, I was like, okay, I pretty much have to stick with this because I had like no energy and I was getting beat. I wasn't really committing myself to one aspect of the game. And so I was kind of just like, okay, at a bunch of different aspects of things. And, I really wasn't focusing on one. So I'd say probably about that time, my sophomore year was really when I just delved right into, I'm doing face-offs 100%.
Kind of, can you describe your recruiting process to college?
Yes, right. I mean, I had my travel league coach, Jeff Colson, with indoor action sports. He kind of like, it was more like he encouraged us to reach out. And so it was a lot of, me typing up emails and looking up coaches' emails and calling them or shooting. I did a lot of emails, a lot of time on the computer. I think I made one highlight video, so I didn't really do too much with that. It was mostly just me reaching out. Uh, Even into like my junior year, I was like, I still think I can go D1, just like every kid wants to do. But so like I reached out to like Sacred Heart and Dartmouth. I think I talked to in person at a tournament one time, but other than that, it really hadn't gone too far. And so I'd reached out to all these schools, and then I'd and at that point, I think Nazareth reached out to me. That was end of junior year. And so I had pretty much started to like whittle it down. I'm like, all right, Sacred Heart's out. I had, obviously ruled out most D1 schools, obviously like all ACC, Big Ten schools. I obviously wasn't getting, recruited by then, because by that time, if you weren't recruited to those schools, you probably weren't going. And so by then I kind of, by trial and just tearing down, I realized, okay, like upper end D3 is probably where I want to go. And that's when Naz reached out to me, and I was like, okay, haven't heard of it. But then I looked them up, I'm like, all right, they got a great tradition. They won a few national championships. And after looking into them, I said, absolutely. Went on to visit my junior year at KUA. And then I went on another visit, I think my senior year at KUA, to NAS. And then after that second visit, it was pretty much set in stone. Like, yeah, I definitely want to go here. You know, early on in my high school, I was like, I definitely want to go pre-med, you know, and delving into a little bit more on that topic, I realized like that just wasn't something I was ready to commit to, just because I know that it would take a lot financially, and then obviously just socially from things I just wasn't ready to commit to. And then NAS said, well, we don't really have pre-med per se, but we have a PT program. I'm like, oh, okay, I've had physical therapy before. It's pretty cool. And, you know, from there, just kind of everything just kind of fit into place. I loved the school when I visited both times and loved everything about it. And you know, kind of was, once I got on campus, was a love at first sight after that. And, you know, from there, from that point was, I definitely want to go to Nazareth. You know, I'd considered some other schools. I applied to Ohio Wesleyan and Widener University in Philly. But Naz at that point was my go-to.
Awesome. Well, the next question was going to be, as well as lacrosse, obviously you are a doctor in physical therapy. Kind of how did you get that? I guess you kind of answered that question already, just based on what Nazareth had. But can you describe a little bit of kind of going into that field, especially how it kind of relates to your love of sports?
Yeah, I mean, I had a couple episodes of PT. I have chronic ankle sprains, so I had been on and off for that over my high school career. And so applying to NAS, I had two options. I could just apply and do an undergrad in whatever, or I could apply to the PT school my first year. And so what that would entail would be 3 years of undergrad school and 3 years of graduate school. And so I was like, well, it makes no sense to do 4 years and then try to apply and do another 3. So I applied for the PT program. So I would go into my freshman year right into the PT program, and I did, which turned out to be probably the best situation for me, just because that way my transition from junior to senior year wasn't going to get bogged down with trying to apply to schools. I could just continue the path I was already on with my advisors and everybody, and then just transition after my junior year to my grad school. So went through my first 3 years, obviously going through all the, you know, curriculum classes, biochem, we have to do some liberal arts stuff because Nazareth's a liberal arts college. So we had to do obviously English, and I had to do a religion class, and so I went through all those over my years. And then summer of junior year, I transitioned into the PT school things, and that's when it kind of really started hitting home. Like, okay, my 3.0 GPA that I needed to get, now I really needed to start focusing on. And so senior year was kind of tricky because you're still competing in collegiate sports, but you're still, you know, you have to maintain a rigorous, we had like, it was like 16 or 17 credits a semester, basically, on average. Well, I wouldn't say on average, but 16 or 17 credits for the most part outside of summers. So we're doing summer, fall, spring, summer, fall, spring, summer, fall, spring. So it was pretty in depth, but you know, that's pretty much how that path went. And, you know, obviously I finished that and graduated.
Awesome. Well, I know that kind of, especially with this whole COVID-19 situation, a lot more kids are going to be trying to take the grad school route in addition to some undergrad play. So I think that will be very relevant with just so many people getting that extra year of eligibility, especially outside you hear about like Michael Sowers right now, kind of getting
Yes.
an extra year, and now Princeton not letting him back and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've been talking with a little bit with Pete Erlin about his situation, and you know, obviously it's tricky with Ivy League just because they, you know, they have a different set of standards that they like to uphold, and you know, it's puts a little bit more stress on the kids. But you know, in TD's situation, already going through 2 different schools, it's, you know, tough. But you know, there are other options for kids, especially if their original plan was to go maybe get a master's in something, or you know, that there's that option out there for them as well. So
I guess kind of going back to your personal college experience, like obviously I'm a junior now, and I still have already created a lot of memories at college. Is there like 1 or 2 instances that will just kind of always stick in your head, lacrosse wise, or even just anything wise, from your college experience at Nazareth?
Let's see here. The first one is when we won our senior year. We won Empire 8s at NAS at home. We beat Ithaca, who was, in my mind, our biggest rival at the time, but now Ithaca has since moved out of Empire 8s. That was the biggest one, just because it was, you know, it's our senior year. We won. Empire Rates, and that was probably the biggest one. And then, I mean, I wouldn't say that's probably the big one that like when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, that was always awesome. And then there's a couple games that I remember just in the snow, just god awful. I think we played like Hamilton one time, and it rained and then froze, and then it snowed like all on the same day. And so like when you're running on sheets of ice. And I remember that vividly. And but other than that, I mean, that's pretty much the big one. Then obviously, I have two of the kids that I played with. I graduated PT school with. Obviously, I have a lot of memories with those guys, and everybody else in the team. There's too many guys to really talk about to mention them by name, but they know who they are.
Awesome. I guess then the next transition in your lacrosse career would be from Nazareth to the MLL. And how did that kind of create itself?
Well, really, I mean, there wasn't a distinct, my Nazareth ended, and then MLL began. Actually, they kind of coincided with one another. I was actually, my first 2 years playing in the MLL, I was actually in PT school still. So I graduated undergrad school. I graduated 2015, but I was still I had transitioned to grad school at that point. So 2015, I graduated. I had filed for to be picked up in the MLL, the entry draft, without any luck, which I had assumed so. Coming from a Division III program, I wasn't expecting, to surpass any of these, ACC schools or kids from Big Ten. Obviously, I had thought that my stats kind of might have maybe nudged me in there a little bit, where I had won over 1,000 faceoffs, and I was statistical ground ball champion a couple of years prior to that. Just a host of other different things I thought might have made me stand out. So it was a little bit of a disappointment to not get picked up, but I understood. And I took that next year to say, okay, I'll continue, and see where this takes me. I continued to train and take face-offs and, coach kids and do all this other stuff on top of going to PT school. And I was still very much involved with the Nazareth lacrosse program as well. And then I got a call from Coach Jacques Monty of the Rattlers when they were in Rochester at the time. And I think this was maybe end of December of 2015. So I graduated in May. So this was basically, another 6 months later, I finally got a call and said, hey, we're thinking about picking you up, just to give you a heads up. And I was like, awesome, like, would love the opportunity. And then they ended up picking me up off of waiver wires in January. And then got to training camp. That would have been April of 2016. So that would have been my second year of grad school. And then I ended up going to training camp, and I kind of edged myself in there, and I didn't play in my first game for the Rattlers, but the second game I did. I actually played against Joe Nardella in Boston for my first game. I think he ended up edging me out, but then after that, I ended up getting the spot, and that was that.
That kind of whole pro lacrosse thing is sometimes very foreign to people, just based on not really knowing the whole kind of transition and how to do what. And I know obviously that you were had an amazing 2017 year being an All-Star, and then that kind of pushed on to the really good playoff run with the Rattlers and everything like that. And then the next summer, PLL. What has that been like?
The transition from the MLL to the PLL, or just the PLL in general?
Both. Just the PLL in general.
Well, I mean, I think, you asked, or you probably heard, just in general, it's just a different feel, where obviously the salaries being bumped up is a big thing. Obviously most of us aren't making a living just purely off of that, but it's monumentous compared to what we were getting previously. So that was a big factor. But then it's all just the little things where, like you see guys like just come out of nowhere, and it's like they're blowing them up on social media in a good way. And it's just, you feel like you're being treated like a professional. We get a meal service provided for us. I feel like the communication is a lot better, as it can be when you're dealing with guys coming from all over the country, and you're dealing with all this chaos of a league like the PLL and the MLL are. But from those aspects, it just seemed a lot more tidy. It's good to actually have we have town hall meetings every once in a while, more so in the off season than in season, but where they clearly lay out their plan moving forward. And for me, it's like, okay, this is awesome to see where, you know, they're having a clear line of communication direct to the players coming from, you know, the executive team at, you know, in the higher ups, where they're telling us, you know, we're going to do this. This is our plan for the season, or, you know, we're trying to do this and move forward this way. And it's good to see. So you just have a feeling that, you know, that everybody that's behind this thing is really doing everything they can to make this thing work, rather than, all right, let's stop the bleeding in this area. Let's, you know, relocate and do all these. It just seems like they're trying to really grow. And that's a big thing, especially for just the sport of lacrosse in general.
It's funny that you mentioned the food service. That's something that a lot of guys have said that's just kind of like the notch above, like just something small that kind of sticks out in the professionalism between the two experiences, which I thought was just a funny aspect.
Right. You give a bunch of professionals a bunch of clean, healthy food, and you'd be surprised how many guys are like, yeah, this is awesome.
Instead of beer and pizza.
Exactly. Yeah. I think one time we got Chick-fil-A after a game, and I'm like, well, I don't eat fried food. So, but yeah, exactly.
Well, awesome. Just in wrapping up, just wanted to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to talk, and wish you best of luck, hopefully with the whole PLL season being as much as it can be among this COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, and good luck with the rest of your junior classes, and hopefully you and your family are safe.
Where can people follow you? On Instagram, Twitter?
Yes. My Instagram is my last name, so it's Simoneau, SIMONEAUD11, and then I think my Twitter handle is the same. So I think I just kept it easy.
Awesome. Make sure everyone who watches this give Drew a follow. Thank you very much, Drew.